got on quicker this.
Okay, we're live. Frank Watson and John Lowe. Tom Probasco may or may not be joining us. This is KaPOOF. We start with a bang and end suddenly. It looks like Tom's here. Good deal.
All three of us. Hi, Tom.
I may have to step away just on account of a refrigerator repair situation going on. But anyway, I thought I'd go ahead and start.
Yeah. Good to see everybody.
Too.
And for those who may encounter this conversation, KaPOOF ends with a bang, or starts with a bang, usually provided by John Lowe, and ends with a poof provided by the free Zoom account, which ends suddenly. So wherever we're at, you have to carry on without us when it ends. Good luck on that. So, guys, how's it going?
Pretty good for me. Great Father's Day celebration. How about you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had all the stepkids in town but one, and a nice message from my son up in North Dakota, and daughter down in Kentucky. So it's and a couple other semi-adopted, as I recall. So, what'd you do, Tom?
Well, I talked to all three kids on the phone. Nobody was got Lori in Chicago, Chris down in Tennessee, dealing with the Blueberry Festival, and Sarah down in Greenwood. So, but got to talk to everybody. Went down to the Talbot Street Art Fair and watched Bob McLeish, who you'll remember.
Oh yeah,
from the Woodshed days.
Yeah,
and he played in a group of three. Well, mostly they call it they call themselves Jazz Fragments or something. They've got an interesting name. So primarily Bob on the percussion, had a full drum kit, then a bass player and power player. Then for some of the numbers, they would have a woman who was a vocalist. So anyway, the Talbot Street Art Fair, I've never been to that. I took the Red Line bus down there, got right off, close to it there. And that was a lot of fun. Hot, yeah. But they had things set up, you get under a tent, so on and so forth. So anyway, I had never been to that. So I've heard about the Street Art Fair.
You got to lean. You got to lean into it, Tom. You're fading.
Was this at the Monument Circle?
No, it's in the Morton Huron. Let's see, it's the neighborhood. It's on Talbot Street.
Okay.
It's between I got off at 18th Street, and that put me at the southern end of the thing. So it takes up all of Talbot. It takes up from that point of Talbot Street forward, and it's just part of that. Can't think right exactly the name of the neighborhood. Frank, you might see Morton something. It's got a two-part name to the neighborhood, but it's actually on Talbot Street. So hence, they've been doing it for years. I had just never been to it before. I've always lived south. And
that area has been an arts area for decades. I know that they used to have, was it the Black Curtain Theater? I think they had there. And every year they've had the art festival there. That's different from the Summer Fest that I had thought might have been at the Circle. That comes at a different time.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things there, including the Strawberry Festival went on recently.
Yeah.
Now the Black Curtain was the first place that in town that I really played publicly. played
Now,
guitar.
explain where was this, Frank?
It was
What
a
did you
Black
say?
Curtain, but they had the Hummingbird Theater in the same space.
And what did you call it? The Black Curtain?
Curtain.
Black
Black-
Curtain. You had the Black Curtain and the Hummingbird Theater there and close together, and Stan Smith ran the open mic there and booked talent.
Okay, where was this, guys?
Talbot and
Oh,
what was it, 20s?
Not too far from 16th Street.
Up
I know.
about 20th Street or somewhere in there.
okay, kind of where I was, but a long time ago.
Yeah.
Frank, you remember Jack O'Hara during
Yeah.
that period? They were performers, and he came out of Marion College, and they were terrific satirists and actors and actresses. And I just wonder if you remembered them.
Yeah, I remembered him. Remember him. I was not closely tied to that group, but I was aware of him and saw him do a little bit. And I went on to do community television, and we had a performance group that was not as publicized. I've still got a bunch of videotapes. I wish that were digitized, but you know, you got to let that stuff go.
Well, we were, as you know, we were working on it. The other party involved just sort of dropped off of it. I never knew why. Now, where did you play? You mentioned publicly performing, Frank. Did you say you played in the Black Curtain or
It was at the Hummingbird.
oh, the Hummingbird?
Yeah, and I don't remember. I think it was in the same building. My memory fades, but I played the open mic there,
Okay.
and
Well, that was the Hummingbird. Wasn't that the restaurant that was attached to the Black Curtain?
I think that's yeah. I think that's.
Yeah.
But they it was an exceptional creative location.
I always heard about it and I was never there. So you were playing there probably sometime in the 70s, roughly
Yeah,
speaking?
it would have been 74, 75, or early 70s probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm aware of some of your musical past, but every now and then something else comes up. I didn't remember that. And John, you played the saxophone.
Well, I did.
Don't know much about your saxophone history.
Well, I did my younger years, played in a big band, the real big bands in those days. And up in northern Indiana, I was living in Fort Wayne at that time. And there were places on the lakes there in northern Indiana, like Pokagon Park and Bledsoe Beach and Huntington and Tippecanoe. And then in Fort Wayne itself, we had a dance hall that we played at. It was the Valencian Gardens. And I met my wife there, in fact. And so we played in the big band. And I got away from that until, believe it or not, I was teaching at Marion College. And I came back to it. And I did this on the side, along with a lot of other things. And one of my students asked me to join a group that was being organized by a man who had been an alcoholic, and he had played with Les and Larry Allgart. I don't know if you remember that big band. And to one of his therapies was to organize this band and to overcome sort of as a habit. I'm sorry, as a well, anyway, it's a hobby is the word I was trying to find.
Give him a focus.
That's right, a habit. Yeah, not habit, but well, I just said the word. Anyway, and this developed. We had played in the basement of the band of his house. I mean, and then he brought in the brass and the rest of the orchestra. Then I was sort of his follower. Of course, I had a lot of experience and playing the earlier years, and so we played around with the different unions, and then there was weddings and funerals, and I'm one organization after another. And so then one night we had a at the it was a officers club on Fort Harrison there, and the dear leader didn't make it because he got off the wagon and got drunk or something. And I inherited the band.
Oh my!
And so we proceeded. I was the leader then, just by inheritance.
By default.
And we progressed quite well. You know, it was a good band. He brought it together very well, and good musicians, and some of the best in Indianapolis, really. And one year, why we played on the Circle there, two different Circle Fest occasions. You know, they had 4 bands around the Circle there on different directions, southwest, north, and east. And so we occupied one part. First time was on the south side, and the second year we did it on the north side. So we had a big band. It was 12, well, what I'm saying, it's about 17 pieces plus a girl singer. So we had a great time doing that. And so that was my experience there, you know, that there were thousands of people at that time at the Circle Fest. And I don't know if they still have it or not. We also played at the To Market, which was a festival to try to encourage the business there at the city market.
About what year?
That's what I was going to ask.
Well, it's a good question. I'm trying to think back. This was probably in the 70s, early 80s, maybe early 80s, late 70s, I believe, somewhere in there.
That's interesting.
Gets away from me, the timing.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, I never heard it. I mean, I knew that you played saxophone, but I hadn't heard anything, you know, about when you did that or where. So it's good.
Well, I was pretty much into jazz saxophone playing. It was a great hobby, and I even did it somewhat in Florida after I retired a bit. And then it got too heavy that I couldn't hold it around my neck because a tenor saxophone is not light.
No.
And so I had to sell it. And same thing with my artwork, why I had to, I couldn't hold my arm up high enough to paint on against the upright easel. So I gave up that stuff at my older ages.
You know, I didn't know. Now, you've also done paint.
Well, yeah. After I retired, I did artwork quite a bit in high school and so forth, but nothing really. But after I retired, I picked it up in Dunedin, Florida, which I lived after retiring, and it's a very arty area. And I took lessons and developed it there.
Okay. Now, did you learn saxophone high school, college, on your own, or how did the training?
Well, I started with clarinet. Started with the clarinet, and
okay.
And then went to the saxophone because that's, you know, if you're going to play in the band, you couldn't play clarinet alone. And I did play a lot of clarinet solos too.
Was this high school, or when did you?
High school and somewhat with the big band too. Yeah.
In high schools, where you begun to learn.
Where I got the boost in, and then went on with the organized group there. It was called Jimmy Steers band, Jimmy Steers Orchestra in those years.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that.
Well, unless you ask, you wouldn't probably know, and you wouldn't know unless you asked.
Yeah, well, I just knew that you, Frank
Yeah.
mentioned to me you had played saxophone, but then I hadn't heard any, we went off in different directions and hadn't heard about that.
Well, I like to play in the Stan Getz style. I don't know if you ever heard of him. And
Yeah, I
girl
have.
from Infamina, that
Yeah.
bossa nova style, which I really love. That kind of cool, subtle, soft sound.
Yeah.
Alan Stratner's father, Alan Stratner is a harmonica player, a very good harmonica player here in Indianapolis. His father was a financial manager for Stan Getz and influenced him in doing Girl from Ipanema. And Stan didn't want to do it. Is
that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Al's father, as I recall the story, and my memory could be faulty, told him that it would be a hit for him, a financial boom, and it pretty well put him in a good place financially.
It was
that particular song.
That particular song, that just had a terrific response.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this whole album was a very well received, 1,000,000 records or something like that throughout the world.
Yeah.
Which really helped him economically, as Frank said, and it fit very well in that sort of a cool, relaxing, interesting rhythm that was really new at that time.
John, I've been maybe you could recap some of the conversation about liberal and conservative that we've had for Tom.
Tom, did you receive my paper that I sent out?
Yes.
Were you able to read it?
I read that. I did what you told me. I had to download it in such a way that it formatted it right, and then I could read it just fine.
Because it was encrypted for a while.
Yeah, then that got straightened out.
Well, then I sent a corrected one. So I hope you're.
Yeah, I got a hold of that. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I presented there what I hope to bring out a crisis that we're sort of facing today, politically and culturally. Two extremes. And I think the one is much more apparent and facing us most directly is the right wing problem, which is semi-fascist and autocratic.
Autocratic, yeah.
And so I'm going to use the words as I do, we can, I suppose. Trump, I think, has one thing in mind is for his own power and extreme control, to the point, and he's already said this is nothing I haven't learned from his words. He wants to change the Constitution.
Right.
And now he was actually promoted by Jerry Falwell.
I'm aware of that.
Remember the moral majority, and they became political as a religious group, an extreme right-wing religious group. Now, Pat Robertson was a candidate back at the time. That didn't go anywhere. So Jerry Falwell, who was a segregationist, incidentally, promoted who? Donald Trump.
Yeah, it goes all the way back to that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, that isn't going on that long, really.
Yeah.
It goes back to Hillary, back in those earlier years. And if you remember, there were the 12 Republican candidates, and the one that was probably going to be the one to counter Hillary was Jeb Bush. He would have been the natural one to represent the Republican Party properly. But who blew him away and all the rest?
I know. Yeah. I remember it well.
Blew him away. What a wonderful speaker he was. I mean, I hated everything he stood for and his manner and how he called people personally and so forth. But good night, what a speaker. And timing and enunciation and humor and why he's an evangelist at the highest level. You can imagine, see how he'd draw in people who were taken to hotbed evangelism.
Yeah.
And so the people, he's sort of the new, they call him John Wayne of political, religious political framework.
Yeah.
Raw bone, you know, the protector, the John Wayne God, the God the warrior. Okay. Now, so he's using the right wing radicals, the evangelicals, but they're using him at the same time.
Yeah.
For their religious and moral purposes, much of which is good. There's a lot of good there. But what they want to do is make it political and also alter the Constitution. The Constitution, after all, if you look at it historically, is a liberal document. The Constitution is a liberal document. If we look at church and state from the past being united, it was World War I which really broke that down. There was no separation of church and state through the centuries earlier. It's a new experiment. Came with America, really, in a way through England, but America and the French Revolution and so forth. But the Constitution is a liberal, it really is a child of the Enlightenment, whereby you have an open mind to stress more humanism, more of the secular, rather than being allied with the king and the prelate. You know what I mean? King and prelate. That's what World War I broke that down tremendously, because all the different kingdoms, God is on our side. God is on our side. And a third of the people, the guys that went into war, were killed, and people stopped going to church in Europe. It was a post-Christian era after that. I remember in America here, in my past, people kept saying the post-Christian era, post-Christian era. I thought, well, wow, I don't like it that way. America, we didn't go through that. We were very religious, you see. We were building churches and so forth after World War II. But World War II was sort of an aftermath, a continuation of World War I. So at any rate, the breakdown of the old church state wedding relationship goes way back to the revolutions of France and England. At any rate, it was a liberal document to separate church and state. But at the same time, America was primarily a Christian country as far as the people were concerned, populace. But the Constitution did allow for an openness, open-mindedness, to allow all kinds of differences. And but it did include, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and so endowed by the Creator for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, without that, it would have been I think, a tragedy for the Constitution. Would have been a tragic thing because we would have had no sense of value to really support it. Because really, the highest value that we must always hold to is the connection between man and God. If you take God out of the picture, then morality and values go out the window. It can be anything. Morality is anything you want to make it. And then, as Nietzsche says, we then will gravitate toward power. Power will take the place, human power take the place of the sense of the divine, the transcendent. So anyway, any questions as I go along? Your thoughts? Well, I could go on and then say too that the evangelicals want to change the Constitution to make the America, let's say America, an official Christian country. Official. The Constitution itself does not make it an official Christian country. It just allows that we are created in the eyes of God in a sense that's important. But not a Christian country, just, well, it was Dina's point of view that God is there and here we are and we're children of God in whatever sense. Open question. So that is pretty much the idea of the Constitution as far as that's concerned. It's an open question, but that's a liberal document. Now, these people want the radical right wing want to insist that the America be an official, not just by the numbers of Christians, an official Christian country. And so they therefore use such terms as I want to make it here, call it Christian nationalism, a biblical republic, or even going so far as to say a white Christian country. Well, this goes back to a certain thinker back in the 1960s, 70s, 80s in there. And I'm mentioning his name. I could give it to you, but it's on the paper. But anyway, if you go far enough with this, let's establish this official country, Christian country, from the Bible, the Word of God. Okay, what would that be? The Old Testament. That's the Word of God. So if you go far enough with it, then our country could be modeled after the Old Testament. And then we could clear up all this immorality. Well, what of them? What about drugs? Of course, they would go into that. Well, all kinds of laws, I suppose, they would set up, and they would tighten up on marriage and divorce, certainly, and hyperfeminism, abortion. We've already gone through that conflict. Homosexuality. What would the Old Testament say about that? Unnatural sexual identities. What would they say about that? What are they saying about it? Regulated immigration, because that's another matter that would, well, that would be maybe part of the Old Testament too. But and then, of course, immigration is a big problem, and it poses, I think, one of the problems why there's a movement in Europe too toward right-wing thought and leadership, is because of the immigrants they came from Syria, and it was threatening the culture of the people that their natural culture that was there before, and because most of these people were Muslims, so coming into these countries, you see, would challenge their heritage, their culture there, and so that's why you want to oppose that. And that's a problem in this country too, because we've settled in sort of a style of life, a style of living. And
we are at We are at 10 minutes.
to go.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, there's this movement then to make it official Christian country, and then to curtail and to probably make into law more forcefully the abuses of the corruptions and degradation of our culture today. So the Trump would be using the evangelicals, and the evangelicals would be using Trump for this, toward these ends. And so if he wins, we're going to have problems. If he loses, we're going to have problems. And they're willing to fight. I mean, they're already talking about we're willing to fight. The warfare. They're saying this right along. And so with this, I open up. Got 10 minutes. I've gone quite a bit here. I'm trying to portray fully what this is concerning. This is just the one. This is the right wing, and of course, the left wing is another matter and something that's, as I point out, it's more ominous yet. Well,
why don't you go ahead and let's use our remaining time to cover. You go ahead and cover the left wing, and then Wednesday we'll be up to snuff. And I will say right now that my bias is that that both
say anything you want to do, Frank. Don't be afraid to be counter and to save our feelings. We got to be more forceful. You know, say what you feel. If you disagree, say it. Don't be afraid.
I think we have to get enough distance from the left and the right to place them in a more geologic time frame. With that said, go back and bring us up to date on your views on the left, John.
The only thing is, I think the view on the left is not as immediate. I think on the little longer period of time, they will be more of a problem. But they do represent a certain intellectual level within the universities. And it's sort of a new neo-Marxist point of view. Does not represent the Democratic Party at all. So if you think about it being left-wing, it's not Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, if it goes left much more than it is, I would say Biden's rather middle away, a little maybe to the left, as far as a leader. But those who want to push more liberal are really wanting more of a socialism like you find in Scandinavia. A democratic socialism where you do have a market economy, private property, but things are controlled as far as production is on the higher level and labor and all that sort of thing from above. But that's the direction that like Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders is not a communist. He would point to this kind of liberalism. Now, the Democratic Party, that's not the same thing as, but they have similar needs, stressing similar needs. That while the right wing, it's more moralism, I would say on the left side, it's justice, the marginalized people, the immigrant, people of racial differences, fair wages and equality. I'll point up here. Let's see here what the well, they would say equity, diversity, equity, and But equity is a big one. Equity is for everyone, but what they would say is that I have to go find my notes for that, but there are three words there, and that's my memory slips it. But anyway, they're stressing more the human justice economically, but even more so than Marx. It's more than Marx. It's more like Mao. It's cultural change. Mao stressed cultural revolution. Well, they would say there's a need of a revolution. They don't believe in evolution. They would say our country is a racist country. It is. There is racism, but is it a racist country? And so all they will say is you have to have a revolution, and you have to make it. And this is what they mean by Antifa. Antifa means anti-fascist. You have to. It's a change of culture. And so it's really what we have is a cultural conflict between these two approaches. And so they want to change. They will say that the black man is down. Look how long it's taken, and he's still down. Look at the numbers of black people in prisons, and how long does it take for them to rise up economically? And all this crime, how much of it is black, and so forth and so on. They'll say it'll never change because that's the way it is in our culture. So we have to change the culture by revolution. And that means not necessarily blood revolution, but a culture change in our thinking, our education. That's where the word wokeism comes along. Wokeism, which means awakening. Yes, that's a good thing, but they go so far as to say we have to change our whole idea, not any longer supply and production. Supply and production, but also caring and sharing. Also, what you produce must be shared with others. So one of the big problems there is you can't do away with competition. If you take away competition, then you take away incentive. And if you produce and then you don't get rewarded for what you do, then you give it away. That's one of the problems with equity. The communists had problems with that right along. How do you get these people to find incentive in what they're doing? Well, if you give away your incentive for some kind of reward for what you're doing, you got the achievers and you got the non-achievers. So all that fits into this. So you see, it's such a big big matter to talk about in that 10 minutes.
Yes, and I think that when we look at political systems and like capitalism or democracy, if we compare them to sports, when you talk about business competition, in sports, you may have boxing, you may have track and field, you may have wrestling, bicycle riding, but when you have boxing, there are rules, and it's not the same thing as an unlimited cage fight to the death. And capitalism is an unlimited cage fight to the death, at least American capitalism, the USA capitalism. My stepson, Chris, who was in Europe, he said in Europe, they refer to it as savage